afternoon, everyone. This is Kevin Gianni, and
Welcome to Renegade Health Show.
and
Anne-Marie Gianni.
and
It's Will.
today we're going to show you the last installment of the Doctor. Who are we watching again? Do you remember his name?
No.
No, Dr. Alan Goldhamer. Do you like what you're listening to so far?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. So tell them to check it out.
Check it out.
Raw food diet versus vegan diet. What are some of the things?
Well, raw foods, of course, have tremendous benefits and are a fundamental part of any health-promoting diet. Raw fruits and vegetables are extremely concentrated source of vitamins, mineral fiber, water, and by volume are going to make up the bulk of the diet. We don't advocate a strictly 100% raw food diet for most individuals because those diets tend to be very high in sugar and fat. Whether the calories are coming from nuts and other high-fat concentrated products or from very large volumes of fruit, because we find that just doesn't work as well for most people as a diet that's high in fruits and vegetables, abundant sources of fruits and vegetables, with enough starchy vegetables so they don't get too skinny.
Yeah.
So the idea is you eat as much fruit and vegetables as you can shove in, and then you get enough starchy vegetables to make sure you meet whatever caloric needs you have. And for most individuals, that's going to be a couple pounds a day of fruit and a couple pounds a day of salad. Maybe a little bit less fruit for people that have conditions where they're sensitive to fruit, a little bit more vegetable materials for those that are able to tolerate. And then the thing is, though, even that, it was only about 800, 900 calories. That's not enough calories to meet people's needs. Now, what some people do is pour olive oil over everything, give them alcohol, and tell them it's a health food, and it's cooked at low temperature. It's okay, I don't agree with that. What I prefer to do is see patients get the balance of their calories coming from steamed, starchy vegetable materials.
Yeah.
And the truth is, human beings have used heat to process food for 500,000 years, which is longer than we've been humans in this form. We are very well adapted to using heat to process starchy vegetables to increase their caloric availability. And quite frankly, it works very well in the patient population I see. I do see some problems in some raw foodists where they come in with very characteristic problems. And that is they have problems with their teeth, their nails, their hair, their skin, their energy, their emotional volatility, and their recurrent infections, particularly bladder infections and some of these kinds of problems.
Okay.
And this is from a very high sugar diet. And if you take these individuals and you get them on a lot more greens, whether it's raw or cooked, they'll tend to start improving.
Is it greens?
Greens,
Okay.
green vegetable material.
Yeah.
So collard greens and chard. One of the challenges with raw food, now some people say, well, if we process that food with blenders and juicers and all that, that's better than if we process it with steaming. I disagree.
Okay.
I don't know that there's a big advantage to blenderizing and juicing everything rather than steaming it. Now, if you have a patient that's doing a 100% raw diet and thriving, I have no problem. If their lab values are good, they have good energy, and I have patients that do that, and they do great. Okay, but they're processing the food too, but they're processing it with other means.
Yeah.
For most of my patients, a more practical and I think equally health-promoting environment is to use steamed starchy vegetables as a source of concentrated calories.
Right.
Even though by volume the diet's going to be mostly raw, because you eat these huge volumes of salad and fruit like we serve here. But we also will recognize that. Well, that's an area where some of the people advocating, say, raw food only diets, and I would disagree.
Right.
But always happy to debate those topics, you know.
Now, in the vegan movement, as compared to the raw movement, there's a lot of doctors, yourself included, who've been doing this for a long time, and some of them say grains are good, some of them say grains are bad.
Well, the thing about grains is there are definitely some people that do not do well with grains.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a certain percentage of the population that, for whatever reason, do not do well digesting, but particularly glutinous grains, which we avoid. And particularly glutinous grains ground into a flour increase 300% their caloric density and turn into bread and processed products. We add salt and sugar and turn people into fat, unhealthy beings as a consequence of living on that stuff. Yeah. So I think most of us would agree all that flour, sugar, processed stuff is junk, and we want to avoid that. Now, going back to whole grains, where they have 500 calories a pound per serving, for example, rice and millet and quinoa, there are some grains like those that I mentioned, which often are generally well tolerated, particularly if they're whole grains, cooked in water, not adulterated. And most individuals will do very well with a percentage of their diet coming from those products. Mm-hmm. If you don't, let's say, for example, people have sensitivities to those, well, you should not eat them.
Yeah.
Just get those out. You don't need them. You don't have to do that to be healthy. It's just a convenient, cheap source of calorically rich foods. Now, you might realize, number one, there's never been a culture that I know about in the world of humans that have lived exclusively on raw foods.
Right.
Number two, most people in the world that make very little money compared to the incomes in industrialized countries get enough to eat because they live on rice and beans.
Yeah.
Because those are very efficient, cost-effective means of calories. So even advocating a 100% raw food diet for everybody is a little bit of an elitist type of a recommendation in the sense that you can't afford to get to 1,000 calories a day in many parts of the world, even if you were so inclined to want to do that.
Right.
But that doesn't keep people from having having large numbers of cultures that have very healthy individuals living on rice and beans. Okay. Now, most cultures also include as much fresh greens as is available, and I don't have really a fundamental problem with that. In other words, I think the best diet for the vast majority of people is going to be a diet that has fruit and salad and enough steamed and starchy vegetables with small amounts of nuts and seeds, and avoids meat, fish, fatty, dairy products, oil, salt, and sugar.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that either vegans or even raw foodists have trouble digesting proteins?
Well, there are many patients become vegan because they're sick. Okay. They reach out looking for help for their chronic illnesses. So you will have a disproportionate number of people in, say, the vegan movement that used to be sick. Yeah. Or had problems well before they ever adopted a health-promoting diet. As a consequence, many of those individuals, even though they're doing better now and they're functioning better, still carry these predispositions, and they may not handle rice, or they may not do well with beans, or they may not handle certain fruits or vegetables. And many times they write books and decide because they personally have a problem with it, everybody has a problem with it. Okay?
That's a great point.
I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I think that you should eat the diet that you personally will thrive and function with. And you want to watch out for any dogma, including my own dogma. Mm-hmm. Notice the recommendations that I make are based on watching 7,000 people where I've lived with them, and they come in sick and they get better. So we get general opinions and prejudices and we make certain recommendations, but ultimately it's the person themselves that has to determine what's working and what's not working. All we can do is save them some time.
Yeah.
Because we say, we saw a whole bunch of people that had stuff like you, and this is what they did that works. Why don't you try that and see if it works? And here's how we're going to measure it. Here's the testing we do. Here's the monitoring we do. Here's how we're going to determine if what we're doing is working. If it's not working, let's try something else. Right. Okay? So it's a little bit of a complicated puzzle, because remember, people can get sick because of genetic predispositions, epigenetic variables. They can be exposed to toxins that have accumulated. They may not have been exposed to for years. They may have had dietary choices that were poor. They may have had drug addiction. They may have had bad medical advice and procedures. They may have psychological overlay issues that complicate the situation. They may be getting older and have use and abuse and cumulative issues. All of those things usually. Yeah. And so teasing that apart is what makes this job so fun. Because we get highly motivated people that want to get well and are willing to do dangerous and radical things like eat good, exercise, go to bed on time, and give the body the prerequisites of health so the body can do what it does best, and that's heal itself. And then we get to take credit for it when they have good results.
What do you think? Two patients come in. One person gets better, the other person doesn't.
Yes.
Is there any overriding factor of patients who get better as opposed to patients who don't?
Well, there's a lot of overriding factors. Number one, the patients that get better, okay, which is frankly, most people get better, okay, depending on what you mean by get better as an absolute sense or make clinical improvement. Our goal is to get people getting healthier faster than they're getting sick. Right. So they're actually rejuvenating, they're moving in the right direction. Some conditions are never going to completely recover. For example, if you've had a right arm amputation, given current technology, you're not getting another right arm. Now, maybe someday, eventually, but that's a limitation. Can that person do okay just because they can't grow a new arm? Absolutely. You learn to adapt to the limitations that you've got and function at the highest level possible. The question is, can you get people healthy and happy? The single biggest variable for individual happiness, that serotonin-based event that happens in our brain, is health. People who have compromised their health, it's very difficult for them to experience these positive mood states we associate with happiness. So the question is, can you get people healthier and happier? Absolutely. What's the best way to do it? It depends on the individual. We like to start at baseline. That's where we get an individual, clean them out, if possible fast them, get it back to zero, and then focus on diet, sleep, and exercise.
All right, question of the day. Leawo, what's the question of the day?
How old is...
The doctor?
Yeah. Whoever his name is, I keep on forgetting.
If you like that question, go ahead and post it down below. If not, just what questions you want us to answer moving forward this week. Together we can change the health of the world. Say it. Just do it.
You do it.
One show at a time.